What does it mean to be neutral and why should you care? Neutrality is a fundamental component of the Yuen method. What it means is that, for example, me as a practitioner who is working with a client, I need to be completely neutral in to that client's situation in order to actually perceive what's going on. If I simply take at face value what the client is saying as being the real problem, I will not be able to solve their situation. Because if the problem that they are stating is actually what's going on, then it would have resolved their situation. For example, someone was speaking with me a couple of weeks ago about a situation with their digestion. They're having some very intense digestive issues and going to a doctor. And then when I tuned into them, the situation was not based in physical, was not a physical problem at all. It was emotional, mental, psychological, and it was actually issues with their living situation. It was a relationship issue. It was also related to their income. So that's why it's so important to be neutral. And neutral doesn't mean being super positive, it doesn't mean being negative. And in the Yuen method, we work with these different geometric shapes that that pull together an area that we're working on. So neutral, we want to be positive. We'll be strong to being positive and being not positive, to being negative and not negative, and being neutral. So the reason why you don't want to be strongly positive, or of course, I think all of us already get it why we don't want to be negative, but you also want to be super positive because positive can attract the negative versus neutral is right in the middle. So if you've got positive on one side and negative on the other side, you've got neutrality in the middle, and you want to be in the middle space because then it's being objective. So for example, I love watching mysteries, and you may have heard me talk about that before, but the reason why a good detective can solve a problem, can solve a case, is because they are not making any assumptions about what's actually going on. So the practitioner of this, or if you're doing the Yuen method or any kind of thing on yourself, or just trying to look at your own life problems, the key is to be neutral, to not be attached to it, the answer being one thing or another, to not have an agenda, to not have any preconceived notions, to get completely neutral. And being neutral means getting your mental thinking out of the way. And being neutral comes by really connecting with your nervous system. When I keep doing this is because the nervous system, your spinal cord is one of the main components, which runs up and down your body. So your brain, your spinal cord, your nerves, your cerebral spinal fluid, your spinal column, all of those components come together to make your nervous system. And that needs to be operating properly, fully switched on, and fully connecting to your body and to whatever situation you are wanting to resolve. And because it's a computer, it's neutral. It's not making a judgment. Computers operate on our binary, 0 or 1. Something is either this or it's that. And that's connected to this idea of neutrality. If you're neutral and clear, then that coming from that place gives the ability to tune into, is something true or false? Is it right or wrong? Or what, as we talk about in the Yuen method, strong or weak? That's kind of a topic. That's a whole other topics, but I'll touch on a little bit here. So that's what the person who is doing the Yuen method on themselves or another person is looking for. They're looking for, let's say again, back to like the digestive issue. Is it digestion? Is it strong or is it weak? Well, if there's no weakness there, then that's not the problem. That's not what is actually going on. So then from there, the practitioner starts to look at, well, if it's not this thing, then what is it? Is it physical or is it non-physical? Is it something that is in which area of life is it coming from? Is it their finances? Is it their health, their fitness, their youthfulness, their relationships, or their career? And look for which of those 6 elements are actually weak. So neutrality connects with all these pieces because it's the baseline. In order to get clear answers, neutrality is absolutely fundamental. Because if you're going into a situation with all sorts of preconceived ideas, you will not get an answer. And that is why when someone keeps telling themselves or other people telling them, or it's just a collective consciousness around an idea, oh, I have digestive problems, I better go to the doctor, and it doesn't get resolved, or it may feel better for a while because they give you drugs that for a while will kind of numb things out or mask the situation, but it doesn't get to the root of the situation. So I'm not saying never go to a doctor, never take stuff. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is in order to solve a situation, neutrality is fundamental because that neutrality will allow the nervous system to perceive what's really going on. And pretty much, and you're going to hear me say this probably a million times, whatever you think is bothering you or is the situation is the issue that, and then whatever you think the resolution or the answer is, it never is that. And that is why so many things don't get resolved for people, especially medical, because most of the time, whatever perceived health issue is not actually a health issue. It's usually in some other aspect of yourself, and it just shows up in the body, but that's not where it starts from, and that's not where it's going to get resolved. Because again, if the digestion problem was actually a digestion problem and you told yourself that and identified that, then that would solve the problem. Because as soon as you identify what's actually going on, that pretty much automatically your nervous system, once it knows what's actually happening, it resolves itself. And that's what's part of what's happening in a Yuen Method session is very quickly the practitioner is tuning into what's going on, and it's clearing, it's identifying simply by identifying the weaknesses. It's almost becomes this automatic process where your system resolves its own situations. So remember, neutrality. Again, whether you ever do the Yuen Method, experience or don't, if you want to solve any of your life problems, neutrality is absolutely fundamental to do that. No assumptions, total objectivity, and using your physical sense, your physical ability to feel and perceive what's going on is what's going to solve a situation. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen O'Connor, Yuen Method Master Practitioner. Stay strong.